Shop Talk with Cassandra Renee, the radio show where we talk about it all. Hey, welcome to Shop Talk with Cassandra Renee. With me are my co-hosts, Dr. Lisa.
Good morning, Baltimore and beyond.
You always get so excited with that.
I'm so excited with us going syndicated. I have no idea what to do on Monday. I'm just excited.
Oh, yeah, me too. So where are we anyway? We're in Georgia, Las Vegas, Colorado, just all over the place.
Talking to all sorts of people about all sorts of things.
Hey, radio show talks about it all. I also have my co-host, Kevin Eaton.
Yay. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, you happy to be here?
Indeed. Like every Monday. Started off with a bang with you, Cuzzo. Yes, indeed.
Yes. I would have it no other way,
I know that's right. Yeah, you do it good.
She's looking lovely today.
Mm-hmm.
Today. You know, I hate it when people say that.
I'm sorry.
You look lovely today. What I look like
that was a bad girl into action. You're beaming today.
You know what? That's what vacation does for you. Mm-hmm. That Outer Banks was awesome. I recommend if you haven't been there, visit. It's a wonderful place.
Yes.
Yeah. So Kevin, how was your weekend?
Wonderful.
What did you do?
All I did was ride my motorcycle.
Zoom, zoom.
That's it. And got caught in the rain.
Oh.
That's kind of fun a little bit.
It's fun being caught in the rain.
Well, it's all a part of riding your motorcycle in Baltimore, so you ride around, then get caught in the rain a little bit and dry off and keep it moving.
Oh.
So basically I did a lot of motorcycle riding, just riding around. Having fun.
You wasn't the ones on 695 going like 100?
No.
Oh, Kevin wouldn't do that.
No. Not in these days.
Yeah,
maybe
he said
30
these
years
days.
ago. Maybe 30 years ago.
He's more mature now.
No.
He has sense now.
Yeah. But that's basically it. Just riding around.
That's awesome because it was a pretty nice weekend as far as I can remember. I think I worked. I attended a wedding on Saturday, but Dr. Lisa, we'll get started on you. How was your weekend?
I had to take some Advil this morning, trying to be fit.
Be fit
for D-Bird.
D-Bird challenge.
Trying to be fit for D-Bird challenge.
Because I've been stretching because I'm going to give it another try. Because that video that I made up, it was quite pitiful, y'all. Quite pitiful. When you compare the image of me trying that little yoga move and the image of my mama, pitiful.
I think you and I were in the running for
the
effort.
Oh,
I just need a award for just the effort.
Dr. Lisa was doing push-ups and everything. But you know what? I added a couple of weeks. So now the deadline is June 6th. So that gives our audience a little bit more time to train for the D-Bird Challenge. And for those of you who don't have a clue of what the D-Bird Challenge is, it's duplicating a yoga move that my 75-year-old mom perfected. And if you'd like to see that, you can visit our fan page, which is Shop Talk with Cassandra Renee. And you also can enter via that page. You can actually take a snapshot and have that entered or a short video. The short video is a lot more fun because that's what Dr. Lisa submitted. She's actually sent us an attachment to email, a text message, and she was working it out. Okay, so y'all please remember the D-Bird Challenge. Oh, there's a monetary prize in that, too. $50 to the winner. And there will be a prize, Dr. Lisa. You'd be interested in this. The funniest rendition of it.
Oh, yeah.
The funniest.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Baltimore and beyond. Be fit.
Y'all can do it.
Take the D-Bird Challenge with us.
D-Bird Challenge. And make sure you hashtag Team Shop Talk.
And so many challengers out there that just love these internet challenges. I've seen them do some crazy stuff. I mean, stick stuff on their lips till they look like Donald Duck. And all kind of stuff like that. But this is a safe challenge. This is a very safe. No, really, because I've seen some people do some very crazy stuff. Set themselves on fire. Come on, man.
That's insane.
This is nothing like that.
No,
this is a very, very safe challenge. It's good
healthy
for your health.
It's healthy.
So hey, if you can do crazy stuff like that, come on, do the D-Bird Challenge.
Do the D-Bird Challenge. And actually, D-Bird, my mama, she's actually going to be selecting the winners. Okay, so this is just all for fun and good health.
And you can win some money without going to the emergency room.
Absolutely. But yes, absolutely. You may be a little sore because I was a little sore after I was a little.
Some Advil.
Yeah, I wasn't smart enough to do that. Okay, you know what? We're going to bring Jimmy in. Hi, Jimmy.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing?
How you doing?
Good morning.
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. How was your weekend?
It was a pretty good weekend. A little bit under the weather, but I stayed in the bed and got tell you one thing, I got plenty of sleep in yesterday.
I'm sure you did. You know, as I started to mention earlier, and you know what? I'm going to go into this really quick. I'm going to let our audience know what our topic is going to be today. I am so excited about it. Then I'm going to go into what happened on my weekend. But we actually have representatives from the Women's Law Center for Maryland here with us. We are so excited to have them. We have Laure Ruth and we have Michele Siri. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're going to be talking about, we're just going to give an overview of pretty much women's rights, you know, as it pertains to family law, domestic violence, employment law, human trafficking, because these beautiful young ladies will be visiting us again in the future, and then we'll break it down in terms of topics. But it's just going to be an overview today. And if you're a man listening thinking, that doesn't pertain to me, oh, yes, it does.
Yes.
You know, if it pertains to women, it pertains to you. Okay? Yes. So make sure you all listen and also call, text, send an email to the women that you know and have them tune in.
Yes.
And feel free to call. As you know, our numbers are 410-481-1010 or toll free 1-877-704-1010. I attended a wedding this weekend, y'all.
Okay.
I was so excited because this young lady, she is so much like my daughter. And, you know, she actually acts more like me than my daughters do. She is just so, as they say, anal retentive. You know, she has spreadsheets for everything, complete perfection, blah, blah, blah. It was a beautiful, beautiful wedding. But how about this, y'all? Because, you know, I will put it out there. I don't care. You know, when you get a certain age, you just feel so good about yourself. You don't care what people think. I called myself videotaping part of the ceremony. It was actually a garden wedding. So there was a glare, so I couldn't quite see what was on the screen. And so I spent 5 minutes videotaping, you know, the different, the mother of the bride and the bridesmaids and a little, you know, ring bearer. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. So when I went to check what I had recorded, it was my face. I had it in selfie mode. Y'all. I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? All I did was record my face for 5 minutes. Yeah, that was a blonde moment. 'Cause I see you looking at me,
I saw
Kevin.
your video. I saw your selfie video.
What
I
did
thought it was going to go
good.
viral. Yeah.
You were waiting for it to go
Waiting for it to go
viral.
viral, yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh. But you know what? I don't care. It was all good. So I'm glad there were photographers there to capture it. Because if it was up to me, it would be it's just all me, the top of my head, you know. But hey,
They'd be on the hot bench talking about she was supposed to videotape about wedding.
Oh, well, so sorry. Still had it in selfie mode. So congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Luther Crawford. Okay? All right, Jimmy.
Yes.
Did you see the video?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't see the video. I'm trying to figure out when you was videotaping, didn't you see yourself on the screen?
But like I said, it was outside.
It was sunny, huh?
You know, so I wasn't quite that dumb, but it was outside and there was a glare on the screen, so I couldn't quite see what I was recording. You know what I mean? It was the glare. I couldn't see nothing. I just knew it was on. I just saw the little red light blinking.
Okay, we go with that. Okay.
We can go with
we
that.
go with
That's
that.
what really happened, Jimmy. Stop it.
No, I can relate to that because I've done it a lot recently, trying to video outside, but
Yeah.
you can't see the screen.
You can't see the
so
screen.
So you just hope that you
capture.
Right, yeah.
And that's
So
what I
I'm
was
with you,
doing.
cuz.
I was
I got
holding
you. I
that
got
at
your
an
back,
angle
cuz.
because I'm like, okay, I'm capturing something.
Yeah.
I sure was.
Yeah.
The top
I've done
of my
it.
own head.
But mine doesn't do selfies, so I guess that saved me.
Yeah.
You was a little smarter, huh?
Okay, y'all. So let's get into the topic, okay? And just to remind you all, you're listening to Shop Talk with Cassandra Renee. And again, if you have any questions or concerns or anything if you'd like to just sit and talk to our special guest that we have in the studio today, give us a call, 410-481-1010 or 1-877-704-1010. Again, welcome, ladies. Tell us about the Women's Law Center for Maryland.
Sure. Thank you again, Cassandra, so much for having us today.
Absolutely.
So the Women's Law Center of Maryland is a statewide nonprofit organization, and we perform advocacy on behalf of women on all sorts of issues, family law related, employment law related, really anything that can affect women in the law. We also do an education aspect where we have hotlines. We have a family law hotline, a legal forms hotline, and an employment law hotline. And those are all staffed by attorneys. They're 1-800 numbers. Anyone can call from, or their local numbers. Anyone can call from Maryland and get some advice and referrals. related to their family law cases, their employment law questions, things of that nature.
And the 800 number is?
The Family Law Hotline number is 800-845-8550. And that's open Monday through Friday from 9:30 to 4:30. And as Michele said, it is staffed by experienced family law attorneys. The legal forms helpline is 800-818-9888. And it has more limited hours. It assists people with the forms that are provided by the judiciary for family law cases. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially helping them fill out forms when they're not represented by a lawyer but want to go forward with divorce or custody, child support, things like that. And the employment law hotline, if I can remember the number, I'll find it. I have it in my bag.
Okay.
I'll get back to you with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, both Michele and Laure will be joining us again, and we're going to actually break these down by category. So you're going to be hearing these numbers over and over again. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what was the original vision of the Women's Law Center?
So it started out actually a group of law students and recent law grads in 1972, I believe, in the basement of somebody's house. They were really frustrated with their own rights, their own abilities. In the early 70s, a woman couldn't get a credit card in their own name. So even though these women had just graduated from law school, if they wanted a credit card, they had to get it under their husband's name or their father's name. They couldn't, if they were pregnant and they were working, they could be fired and let go of their job because they were no longer fit for the job. And at the same time, they weren't eligible for unemployment benefits because they were found to be unfit to work. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the atmosphere at the time when the Women's Law Center was founded. And so it really got started doing some of those kind of advocacy lawsuits. So they brought lawsuits on behalf of women on those sorts of issues. They started advocating in Annapolis on those sorts of issues and moved forward from that direction.
Okay. And my understanding is you don't just service women.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
talk
correct.
to us about that.
I talked a little bit about our advocacy and I talked a little bit about our education, but we also have a direct legal service branch of the organization. And so for that, it's called PORP. It's the Protective Order and Advocacy Representation Project, and that helps victims of domestic violence or intimate partner violence obtain protective orders in Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and Carroll County. Then we also have the Madobe Project, and that's the Multiethnic Domestic Violence Project, and that helps foreign-born victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual trafficking, and stalking get citizenship and legal status in the country. So under the Violence Against Women Act, the federal law, it allows victims of those types of crimes to get U visas and T visas, and we work with them and we work with the victims and their families to get them to have permanent status or legal status in the country. And then we also finally have the Human Trafficking Project. It's called the Trafficking Victims Post-Conviction Advocacy Project. It's a long one, a lot of letters. And Maryland was the second state in the country to enact a law that allows victims of sex trafficking who have convictions for prostitution that are directly related to their trafficking to have those convictions vacated. And so our project helps what to date has all been women, but it would potentially help anybody that's a victim of sex trafficking get their prostitution convictions vacated. And so for all of those projects, while our clients are primarily women, we certainly will serve anybody that comes in that's an actual victim of the domestic violence.
And on the hotlines, we serve whoever calls. So the Family Law Hotline does have income constraints that are developed by the Maryland Legal Services Corporation. So essentially it's for low-income people. But the truth is, if you call, our lawyers are going to help you if they can. With a little bit of discretion, we would help anybody. And certainly any men who call are assisted as well.
But, the question that immediately comes to my mind, what if children call, like someone under the age of 18 because they're witnessing certain things in their households?
Yeah, well, we do get minors who call on the Family Law Hotline in particular. I started at the Women's Law Center as a hotline attorney when I was going back to work after staying home with children for a few years. So, and I still do a shift every week. And so I'm pretty familiar with that one. And we do get minors who call. A lot of the times, we haven't had a lot of calls like you're discussing where they're seeing violence in the home and want to know what to do about it. It's really that they're having a problem and they want to emancipate. and they want to know how they can emancipate. The other kinds of cases we'll get with children are minors who have children. And in under Maryland law, a minor is emancipated for the purpose of decision making about their own child. So the mom might be a minor and the child who they had is usually a baby, but the parents don't always want to let that teenage parent be independent about decision making about the child. And so there's sort of family conflict, and we'll get those calls sometimes. But honestly, we don't get a lot of calls of youth who are witnessing violence or experiencing violence from a parent or family member. With some exceptions, there's occasionally you'll get somebody who's says that they're being sexually assaulted or abused in the home, and we refer them to whatever services we can.
Okay.
And sometimes they may call not with the intent of sharing that information. They're calling, they want to have, and this goes for not just minors, but for anyone. They'll call with questions about custody, questions about divorce, and our attorneys will start to ask them, is there any violence? And they might, from there, start a conversation going in that other direction and then get the referrals that Laure was referring to.
Man, that's awesome. About how many women do you service each year?
Well, that's
Roundabout.
tough. I mean, in direct representation projects, it's about I would say 900 or 1,000 a year between the protective order projects and the Madobe Project. We get about 6,600 calls a year on the family law hotline, another 2,000 or so on the legal forms helpline. I don't have the numbers for the employment law hotline.
About 400 on the employment law hotline.
Yeah. That's a very limited service, unfortunately, due to funding.
Yes.
And so it's only open once a week, the employment law hotline. The other ones are open a lot more. And so, I mean, it depends on how you count how many people do we help. It could be, you could say 8,000 or 10,000, or you could say just the 1,000 or so that we actually give direct representation to. One other project we didn't mention, which is in Baltimore County, is what's called the Judicare Project. And there is a Judicare Project in every county in Maryland. We have the Baltimore County Project, and that's where we place people in contested custody matters with a private attorney to represent them in court. So that's another direct representation project, and that's funded by the Maryland Legal Services Corporation and the Administrative Office of the Courts as well.
Right. So it's no cost to the again, primarily women that we
We represent a fair number of men in that project, I would say.
But it's at no cost to them. The attorneys earn what's generally called a low bono instead of a pro bono rate.
Okay.
But that's paid again through the state so that the people that are eligible for the service can get the attorney that they need.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of studies out there that show that the number one determining factor in custody cases is going to be whether you're represented by an attorney.
Absolutely.
So the chances of you being successful is incredibly tied to that representation.
So how can an attorney find out about your particular program?
Well, we do a lot of outreach. So we're involved in a lot of organizations, the Baltimore County Bar Association, the Maryland State Bar Association. I'm on the local pro bono committee in Baltimore County.
Okay.
And there's another organization called the Pro Bono Resources Center, which is a statewide organization. And I would imagine that these other states have similar organizations out there to try and help the lawyers know what services they can offer and how they can get involved, and also to let the public know what services are out there.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times we get a phone call and the person says, "Oh my God, you're the first person who's listened to me. Nobody else has listened to me even to know what my problem is, to know whether I can get help from somewhere." And the truth is, legal aid in Maryland is a very strong organization, but they are really constrained by federal law to only help the lowest of the low income. And these other projects like Judicare and like the Family Law Hotline are designed for people who still don't have a lot of money. They can't afford an attorney, but they need help. They need help with the legal system. And, we see this as an access to justice issue. And so, broadly speaking, having an attorney helps you in any kind of case. It's just that the Women's Law Center can only do so much. And so those are the areas that we focus on. But really, I don't know if you've heard of the phone number 211. So 211 is started as a United Way project, and I think it is almost nationwide now. But if you call 211 and say, "I have a problem," if it's a housing problem, if it sounds like a legal problem, if it's a domestic violence problem, if it's a food access problem, energy access. They have a tremendously huge database and will try and refer you to wherever you may be able to get services in the county where you live. And, we're listed on 211. We work with the 211 folks in Baltimore and in Maryland. And so, there really are resources out there, but so many people don't know it.
Know about
And
them.
of course, there aren't enough.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows there aren't enough lawyers to represent every single person who needs representation. And there aren't enough services for people who need energy payment assistance. But there are services out there for people if they can just find them.
Right. Because you mentioned something about the forms, forms directory for family law. But what about individuals? Because, some cases are quite complicated.
Yes.
So would you recommend that they try to handle that themselves?
Well, on the Legal Forms helpline, what we try and do is help the person assess whether they can do it themselves or not.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is we have no civil right to counsel in Maryland. No state does except for maybe California has instituted something, and maybe Connecticut. I could be making that up, though, so I'm not 100% sure. But I know California is doing something. So you have no right to counsel in a family law case. However, if you can have one, that would be better. And then there are some cases that if you have to go forward without an attorney, you can probably do. And that's what the Legal Forms Helpline is trying to help figure out. So you can file for custody or divorce with forms that are designed for people who aren't represented.
Yes.
And at some point later, especially if the other side gets an attorney, you might want to get an attorney also, because you can be really disadvantaged by not being represented against somebody who is represented. But those forms are fairly easy to read. They're available in Spanish. There are in every courthouse in Maryland, to varying degrees, a self-help center that also help with the forms. So you can get in-person assistance with the forms, or you can call our hotline and get assistance with the forms. If I had my way, everybody would have a lawyer. Of course, I'm a lawyer, so I'm a big believer. And despite our reputation, we're not all bad people. So, we really do want to help. And so when we can, we do. And the lawyers who work on the hotlines, for example, are doing that, to help people.
Yeah. So what if an individual, this is such an interesting conversation.
Yes, it is.
But what if an individual started the process themselves without going through the Women's Law Center, and then once the other side actually retains counsel, that person comes to you and say, hey, you know what, I think I need help,
Right.
but I've already filed these forms, I've already done these things.
Happens all the time.
What do you say
Happens
to
all the
these
time.
people?
We say, let's see what we can do.
Okay.
So I will say, in our Judicare project, that happens more than 50% of the time. The case has already been started either by themselves or by the other side.
Yes.
And they come and there's a case already brewing there. It may even have dates already set in front of the court.
It may even have dates set for tomorrow.
Yeah.
We've had calls like that.
Yes.
Those are
So-
the most frustrating because there's very little that we can do at that point.
Right, you can't even ask for some type of an extension at that point, can you?
Well, the litigant, the potential Judicare client can ask for a postponement, but the courts don't grant them willy-nilly. They're not really fond of it, and if you've already gotten one for some reason, or the other side's gotten one or two, the court's really going to be resistant to granting a postponement, because really, in their view, you should have gotten an attorney before the week before your case, or the day before, or 2 weeks before your case. But it's not so easy to do. Certainly, we'd like them to come earlier. But I will say this: people who file on their own and then get an attorney, usually the attorney can fix any errors, genuine, well-intentioned errors that were made in any pleadings or paperwork that's been filed thus far.
Okay.
So it's usually not unsalvageable.
Okay.
Certainly we'd like them to come earlier and get a lawyer earlier, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Because do you find that a lot of attorneys don't want to even take on cases like that have already been started?
I don't find that resistance at all.
Okay.
What we'll find is so Maryland has something called Maryland Judiciary Case Search. So you can look up, if you start to date somebody and you want to see if they have a record,
yes,
you can look them up on Case Search and see what their history is with the courts in Maryland anyway. And most other states have something like this as well. So when I look on Case Search for a potential client who's seeking a private attorney, depending upon what's going on in that case, I know I'm going to have more trouble placing it than not. And it has to do with the level of litigiousness of the case, how bad it's been, how highly complicated, how vexatious. Sometimes it has to do with the identity of the attorney who's on the other side.
Yes.
Because Maryland is small, and the lawyers' reputations precede them.
Yes.
So for good or for bad.
Yes.
And so sometimes we'll have that problem placing a case. Usually it's about wariness. If you look on case search and somebody's had 4 attorneys already.
Yes.
The next attorney is sort of wondering what's going on and why that is. And sometimes it's for very legitimate reasons that I can help explain, and sometimes it's not. And it's harder to say, why this person has run through 4 or 5 attorneys. So that's where we encounter a problem. Timing, the level of complicatedness, and a little bit of wariness when they see certain things.
Okay. Before we go any further, because I'd like to share this information at the end of the show as well, your website, would you share that with us and any 1-800 numbers that you have?
Absolutely. The website is www.wlcmd.org. So just like Women's Law Center of Maryland.org.
Okay. Let's bring, because Travis has been waiting a minute, let's bring Travis in. Hi, Travis. Welcome to the show.
Yes, ma'am. I'm enjoying your show because I just became a law student.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
I became a law student. And my school, I live in Maryland, but my school is in California, where it's much liberal, 80% cheaper, $25,000 for the whole 4 years, and no LSAT.
Wow.
So, I was able to go there. My school is online, accredited, and California bar approved. But, as I'm listening, I want to know, can you talk about lawyers doing more humanitarian type of pro bono work and being an advocate for change? Because the reason why, I want to become a lawyer, an attorney, is because I want to help people. But I never thought that I would be able to, like next year in California, I can do like contract law and different things like that, because once you pass the baby bar, you're able to practice law under a supervising attorney. But can you talk more about attorney? Now, many attorneys want to get into being a lawyer because they want to make millions of dollars, thousands of dollars per case. But can you talk more about lawyers or law students who are at University of Baltimore or who are in law school now, like myself? Can you talk more about them becoming more humanitarian type of lawyers where they are helping people? Look, like you were saying, legal aid is this, oh my goodness, it's just crazy down there. So we need more organizations because I know I'm going to start an organization called Right Justice Maryland, then Right Justice California. But can you talk more about people, law students, who will focus on being humanitarians?
Okay.
Make the money, get the money, but becoming more humanitarians and educating people on know their rights and educating people. Like Larry Young just had a guy on the radio where he was talking about, the black man's guide to not getting beat down by the police officers, in other words. So can you talk more about the education component of law students? And
awesome.
Them doing more pro bono and humanitarian work in the community.
Thank you, Travis. Bye-bye.
So, Travis, I would say this. When you look at your law school, I hope that it has a clinic component. I'm not really sure because I'm not familiar with your school, but Michele and I both went to University of Maryland. We have a great relationship at the Women's Law Center, also with the University of Baltimore. And those clinic opportunities is where you find people who are following their passion. So clinic professors, develop ways for law students to get involved early on in their educational part of their career, doing work for things that are important to them. So really this whole bail review attorney uprising in Maryland and what happened requiring an attorney at bail review came from a professor at University of Maryland Law School in his clinic, and his name was Doug Colbert. Sorry, I can never remember which one. And so those are places where you really can get very involved. And it just makes me remember that when Hurricane Katrina happened in New Orleans,
yes,
these law schools sent groups of people down to New Orleans to help people who had been picked up and rounded up, a little bit like what happened in Baltimore City, a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Just sort of rounded up and warehoused in the jails. And the law school students went down there and helped them get out, helped them exercise their due process rights and be heard and get out. So it can start very young. UDC, I think, was furloughing finals a couple of weeks ago if their students came over to Baltimore and assisted, because so many people were jailed at that time and they weren't read their rights. They didn't know what their charges were. They weren't entitled to see an attorney for a long time. It was a potentially really bad situation from a legal perspective to see people denied their due process rights, and there were students who could get involved at that level as well.
Awesome. Jimmy, I'm sorry, but Jimmy, you have to leave soon, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I know I myself had a situation where, dealing with family law, where actually I needed an attorney, but I fell in that gap where I make, really good money, but I couldn't afford to actually have an attorney. What is the income threshold for your organization?
Well, I can do this a little bit from memory. For the Judicare Project to receive an attorney for a custody case, a family of one, which would be if you're the sort of the non-custodial parent and nobody's living with you, has to earn less than $27,000 and some dollars. I can't remember exactly. I think a family of two, so if it's you and a child, has to earn less than $36,000 and some dollars. And it goes up and it changes every year on July 1st according to various calculations of federal poverty level and Maryland poverty level. So it's still
what about
low
the
income.
Family Law Hotline?
The Family Law Hotline is the same guidelines. It's the MLSC, Maryland Legal Services Corp guidelines. So one number we didn't give was our administrative office, which is 410-321-8761. If you think you might be eligible for one of our services or want to know, you can certainly call that office. It's 410-321-8761. And even our administrative assistant knows what the MLSC guidelines are for various projects. And just one other thought about that. A new rule was just instituted by the Maryland Court of Appeals about limited scope representation, which is sometimes called unbundled services. And this is a way to try and help people when you can't give them a whole lawyer for their entire case, to give them part of a lawyer. So I've been doing limited scope for 3 or 4 years now. We got a private grant a few years ago that enabled me to do limited scope. And I could just help people, say, draft a motion to dismiss if they thought the case was filed wrongly or in the wrong jurisdiction or for some other reason, improper service. I could help them by drafting a motion. I could help them by a consultation. I could review a separation agreement. I only practice family law, so everything I did is in the family law arena. But limited scope, they're hoping, is going to allow private attorneys to feel more comfortable doing parts of cases when they can't do the whole case because the person can't afford to pay for it. And there's been some skepticism. There's some negative feelings about it. I think it's a great opportunity, and I actually think attorneys have been doing limited scope forever. They just didn't title it that way. Yeah. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Can you review my separation agreement?" That's what you're doing. You're offering limited scope services. You're just reviewing the separation agreement and saying, "This is drafted well for you," or "This is drafted poorly for you," or you might want to think about X. So that's,
Jimmy, you have another question?
Is there a program out there for the men, or they would just simply call your organization and you will guide them
They can
to
still
another
call.
Organization?
Absolutely. Men can still call. We do serve men. I would say the predominant number of our clients are women, but we absolutely do serve men. And if it's not the right fit for us, we refer, for anybody, we'll refer them out to the proper services.
Okay. Now, with Maryland having a large African community and probably Korean community, when it comes down to family law, do you find that their women are usually violated when it comes down to law more so than an American woman would?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
Okay, can you rephrase it, Jim?
Say again. I guess with them, say Africans and say the Korean community and their, I guess with their ways in their country, when they come over here and they become Americanized, but when it comes down to the law itself, are they usually more violated by their family within their family and come to you more so than American family?
Okay.
So I think there are tremendous cultural differences, if that's what you're talking about. And certainly we do see that, especially in domestic violence, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we've had cases where we're representing a woman who's been, physically abused fairly violently, and her own family is standing in the courtroom supporting the abuser, their husband. And they say, we will sweep it under the rug. They don't say that, but that's what I see it as. They say, we'll take care of this as a family. We'll take care of this internally. You don't go outside and you don't go to the law for assistance. There's a group called HANA, which is a Jewish group in the Reisterstown area, in the Pikesville area. They deal primarily with the Jewish Orthodox community and domestic violence, because that community is so closed that they want to take care of it inside. The rabbis get involved and they say, we'll handle it, don't worry. And they don't want people to try and access services that are out there. And I would say certainly in African nations, some of them, the Nigerian countries have, country has a different view about family. Multiple spouses is an issue, and they can want to move the kids around from maybe the biological mother who's here in America to the other wife who's home in Nigeria. So yeah, there are a lot of different aspects that sort of you don't think of when you're sort of maybe born and raised in Baltimore.
And I think our Madobe project, that's the one, the Multiethnic Domestic Violence Project that I was talking about earlier, really tries to address the differences and be as culturally sensitive as possible. So, we have a legal advocate there who is Hispanic speaking, and so she does specific outreach within the Hispanic community, for example, and we do have a large percentage of clients that are from various African countries, and so we, try and address their needs as each one comes up and as culturally sensitively as possible. But when it comes down to it, violence against women is violence against women, and so we're trying to make sure that they understand that they've got rights, even if it might not be culturally acceptable.
And also what happens is in their home country, they don't trust the police, they don't trust the judges and the judicial system, and there's a lot of education that goes on about that too. So once they find out that they may have rights in America, there's still some hurdles to get over to get them to feel comfortable walking into a courthouse, for example, or talking to somebody in law enforcement in uniform, because in their home country that has not ever worked.
Jimmy, do you have any more questions? I know you got to go.
No, that's it.
Oh,
that's it.
Hey, very good questions. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
All
right, bye-bye.
All right, thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm enjoying this show. I think this is one of the best shows we've had.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes, I wanted to bring some attention to your Madobe. And you were talking about how it has to do with foreign-born people.
Yes.
And Maryland is a state that I do believe we have a lot of foreigners that are all moving here. Can you kind of sort of expound on that? Because let's say you have somebody here, maybe from Haiti, or that moved here, and you were saying how you could you explain
absolutely.
How do you cross that river? How do you cross the oceans and do your job like that?
Right. So just like you were saying, the Madobe Project is for foreign-born victims of domestic violence, intimate partner stalking, sexual assault, and sex trafficking, or human trafficking in general. And what we do is we work with the victims to obtain legal status in this country. So that means if they are here as undocumented, or perhaps they have a green card, but they're tied to their abuser. Their abuser is who's sponsoring them, for example, or their abuser is very often threatening them with, I'm going to get you deported, I'm going to get the kids deported, I'm going to get you separated from the children. The victims often don't realize that they have rights. They're scared to go to the police. Even if they wanted to, they think they can't because they think they'll end up getting deported. And so under the Violence Against Women Act, which is a federal law, those victims have rights that they can come and petition for U visas and T visas.
And self-petitions if you're married to your abuser.
Right.
It gets a little complicated. But.
And then there's something called derivative claims, which would be the claims for their children as well. And so we work with them to go through that whole process. It's really an amazing project, too, because it can take years for the whole project to go through and to get that status done. And so we really get to see these women, come to us first, often in a state of crisis. And then once they've obtained status, once you've obtained status, you can get a job, you can continue education, you get more stable housing. And so we really get to see the whole process go through with these women. And again, like I was saying earlier, we try and do it as culturally specifically as possible. We work with interpreters through various organizations like Language Line and things like that if we don't speak their particular language. But a lot of our clients through Madobe are Latino. And so we do have the Spanish-speaking legal advocate who works deep within the communities on education, on outreach, on making sure they understand that they've got those rights and that they can come to us and not be afraid of being deported.
Okay, that was a question I was going to ask you. Do they necessarily have to speak English? I mean, if they was foreign, there's a good possibility they may not speak English. So
I would say a lot of them don't speak English, right? Yeah. So like I said, so we've got for the majority that are Hispanics that are Spanish speaking, we've got the legal advocate, but then there are resources that we use to get those interpretations done.
Okay, you're listening to Shop Talk with Cassandra Renee. We air here every Monday from 10 until 11. We are having a wonderful conversation with Miss Laure Ruth and Miss Michele Siri. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just one more.
Oh, sure.
So we were talking out in the lobby, and you made a good scenario when you were talking about there may be a mother that has a child here, and then may have children in their home country, and you talking about services that you provide.
Right.
Can you sort of like expound on that?
Those are the derivative claims, so that once we've gotten her status confirmed, then we can work on bringing her family over. I don't know if Laure wants to touch base a little bit on the technicalities. I'm not.
No, I mean, as Michele said, these cases can take several years, and one of the reasons is the U visa. The U visa is a federal law that allows you to obtain legal status in America if you assist law enforcement in criminal matters. So, assault, battery is a crime. And so if I bring charges against my abuser and I'm foreign born, and then I agree to testify or give other assistance to law enforcement, I can then seek a U visa. There is a limit on the number of U visas nationwide that are allowed to be given out every year. And that limit is reached within 3 or 4 months of it starting every year. So I think it's on a fiscal year, not a calendar year, but let's say it re-upped on January 1st. Usually by the end of March, it's all of those numbers for that year are done. And so you just wait a long time. But while you're waiting, if you have worked with Madobe or other projects like it, you're here legally. So you can't be deported, and you can get the ability to work and while you wait for your essentially number to come up for your U visa. The self-petition is the same type of relief in that you get legal status, but you don't have to cooperate with law enforcement. It doesn't have that law enforcement component. It's just if you're married to your abuser and you can demonstrate certain things, you have to demonstrate that it was a real marriage, for example, not a fake marriage, and you have to prove a lot of other things, then you can self-petition rather than having a sponsor, which is how many immigrants get status here, so that you can get away from your abuser, who is often your sponsor or usually your sponsor. So those are the two big ways that we help people. But once you do finally get your status through the U visa, then we can work on helping you bring your children here so that you can all be together.
Okay, Dr. Lisa.
First of all, this is a great show.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
This is a great show. It's a lot of information. And for those of you who are out there, this is a resource for all of you who had questions, didn't know where to direct those questions. I teach family violence at Kauffman State. And so the whole issue of the legal premises that people have as options or resources to bring resolution to their family situation, whether it's spousal abuse, whether it's elder abuse or even child abuse, there are a lot of legal red tape. And I just encourage my students, if you're taking this class and you're in the human service field, do Family Law 101, just as a basis of building language, and get the resources so that you can help your clients.
I agree.
Oftentimes, we find clients feeling stuck because they don't know the law.
Yes.
Right.
And then we find clients who, for some reason, kind of fall in the gaps and they don't know that there are rights out there that they have.
So I think the greatest resource for that is our Family Law Hotline, which is that 800-845-8550 number. We get a lot of people who say, I need to get out of this. How do I get out? There may not even be violence, but it's just they've got to get out. And where do I start? And we can give them the basic primer and send them to other resources to educate themselves so that they then can make a plan to move forward and disentangle themselves from whatever they're entangled in.
It's good that it's good that you mentioned that it isn't always physical, because that emotional damage that can be done can be just as devastating.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
And financial control is a big issue.
Absolutely. So a lot of times women think, oh, I'm not being physically abused. So, but no.
And I will say this, a lot of the times women and men too, I'm sure, get involved in relationships in good faith. And then things just don't go right. And sometimes it can change from being just an unfortunate situation to a controlling and bad situation, especially with that financial piece. So like when I talk to young women today, I spoke at Towson University a few weeks ago in a sociology of gender and violence class. And what I want to say to young women is get a job, support yourself, because the laws in Maryland are not going to help you financially. If you get married and then need to get divorced, or if you have a child, there's not a lot of money help out there. And the best thing you can do for yourself is be financially independent. I've really come to a place where I think that's one of the most important things. And in domestic violence, that is also the case. If you're in a situation where you're being abused, financial independence is going to help get you out of that situation. It's vitally important.
Domestic violence is currently one of the leading causes of homelessness for women in Maryland.
Wow.
Absolutely, yes.
And it disproportionately affects the number of women who are receiving public assistance. 55% of them have experienced domestic violence, whereas nationally it's about 1 in 3. But for women on public assistance, it's even greater. It's more than 50%. Amazing. So that financial impact is really huge.
Yeah, this is great because for those of you who are listening, it's just a phone call away.
Right. And we get a lot of calls for people that don't even know what their questions are.
Right.
And that's what the attorneys are really well trained at. And they've got a great amount of experience in just kind of helping figure out what the actual problem is. They might think they're calling because they need to file this, but really they've got 6 other issues that they didn't realize that they couldn't quite figure out through the fog.
Yeah, because some people are uncomfortable calling because they're afraid of being made fun of or belittled or something, sort of, like that. Yeah. So it's good to know that there's a service out there where their concerns and questions are welcomed, and there's someone on the other side who's patient enough to hear them out and kind of pick through and figure out what services are relevant for their particular case.
So all of our attorneys on the hotline are family law attorneys, and I don't think every lawyer who goes to law school goes into family law, because it's not for everyone.
Absolutely.
Honestly, when I used to practice privately, I would say, well, I'm part lawyer, part a social worker, part psychiatrist, part friend, and those boundaries are hard. And of course, when you're in private practice and you're charging people, they really shouldn't be your friend, and you should go somewhere else for your social work needs. Just use the lawyer for the legal needs. But the hotline attorneys are really, as Michele said, very good at trying to sift through the nonlinear stories that they're hearing to get to what the legal question is, if there is even one. Sometimes there isn't one, and we have to tell them that too. Like, this is not something that the law can take care of. But we're pretty good at it when we get started.
It's so interesting you brought up the different hats that you have to wear, because you are meeting them at the worst times of their lives. That's when they are pretty much the craziest, because everything is just unraveling and out of control.
Yes. And I guess the social inequalities that women have to deal with. Yes. I mean, we need advocates in all areas, from policy making. And that really is one of the questions that I have for you. How much influence do you have in policy making to support women who have experienced inequality, whether it's economically, whether it's employment or whatever area? How do you?
So we're very active in advocating in Annapolis. This past session was I've only been at this job now for 5 months.
Oh,
so this is my first time going through the session.
Excellent.
And I've got some really great experienced staff, like Lori as our legal director, helping me through this. And it was our first session, or my first time through the legislative session, and I think we provided testimony on about 90 bills.
Wow.
That was written testimony. We went and testified personally in around 60 bills. Mm-hmm. And we had some really great outcomes this year. I think there were about 5 or 6 really positive bills that were related just to domestic violence and increasing the resources for victims of domestic violence, increasing the scope of who is covered. Mm-hmm. So, traditionally, in order to get a protective order, you had to be either married or have a child in common with mm-hmm. the abuser. And so that left a lot of people that were victims of dating violence to get a peace order, which isn't quite as effective. It's not as broad. It doesn't last as long. And so this year, the law has been changed, and it's going to include then anyone that's had a sexual relationship within the past year. It doesn't have to be consensual sexual relationship, just any kind of sexual relationship within the past year is now going to be eligible for relief via protective order.
And this is what I'll say to the prior caller, Travis, was it? That's another way to get involved, is to mm-hmm. go down to your state legislature and testify and tell the stories that help these legislators understand what they're doing. Annapolis is crazy. It's a 90-day session. And to give credit to these legislators, they are bombarded every day with hundreds of different issues. And so what they need is something to capture their interest and memory, essentially, to say, oh, that's why we need to change the law this way, or that's why we need this new law. And we've actually had clients come down and testify, and they've been instrumental in getting a law changed or made better. So we had a client testify. It's probably been 5 or 6 years when they made it mandatory to remove the guns when somebody gets a final protective order. Yes. And that was a client of ours from Carroll County whose husband had held her hostage. There was a SWAT team involved, and it was a long gun. It wasn't a handgun. But he shot at her twice. He just didn't have very good aim, fortunately. And she worked with Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown at the time, and they got that law passed because it was her chilling personal story that convinced the legislators to do that.
Yes.
So I've been going down there for 7 or 8 years, and it's always something different. It's always new and a little frustrating at times, but they, they're very well-intentioned people, the legislators are, and it really is just about finding your way to get your message across.
Because they're being asked to be experts on every subject that's coming before them. And so they really need that individual person that can come forward and be the voice or be the story behind whatever they're asking for.
And I have one more question. Okay.
What is the Kauffman Center for Family Law and the alimony guidelines? What is that all about?
Well, okay.
I'm sorry, Lisa.
Just very briefly, Bruce Kauffman was a family law attorney in Baltimore County, a revered and well thought of family law attorney, and he passed away. It's been over 10 years, I think. And his family left us essentially an endowment so that we could do good family law things. And that's what we've tried to do since then. One of the things that the Women's Law Center did, and honestly, this was before my time, and I've been there over 7 years, was look at alimony in Maryland. And it's very unevenly applied and granted, and it's because it's so fact specific. And so the goal was to make it more predictable. Mm-hmm. It would help attorneys advise their clients, like, you don't have a prayer, you're not going to get alimony, or you have a good case for alimony. And it would maybe help judges to know what, where they are in the hundreds or thousands of dollars a month. And so they developed the Kauffman alimony guidelines named in his honor. And it's a logarithm equation where you plug in all these different things and it spits out a number. It says, you're a good candidate for what we call rehabilitative or temporary alimony, or for indefinite alimony. If they say rehabilitative or temporary, it says, we would recommend 5.2 years at $375 a month. Mm-hmm. And really, to me, what it's come to be, my understanding from the legal community, is a starting ground for negotiations. Mm-hmm. So we are not controlling it anymore. We offered it for free for 5 years to lawyers and the judiciary and everybody else who's involved. And now we've turned it back to MarginSoft, who was the creator of the mathematical algorithm behind it all.
Yeah. And
MarginSoft is now, because they have to update it when tax laws change and when family law changes in Maryland. They have this guidelines in some other states as well. I know they have it in Michigan. They may have it it's a couple of states that they're involved.
Okay.
But that was a big project at the time.
Dr. Lisa, quickly.
One of the areas that I wanted to see if anybody was covering was to connect the faith community with the Law Center, because just educating faith leaders about the law and not be afraid that can be a remedy for especially for victims of intimate partner violence, but family law in general.
It's funny you asked that because I just registered for an interfaith conference that's happening, I think, in a couple of weeks, and it's leaders from across the state, different faiths, coming together to talk specifically about domestic violence issues.
June 3rd, Annapolis.
Oh, there you go.
I'm part of the committee, the Interfaith Domestic
wonderful.
Violence Coalition from the governor.
Yes.
So I look forward to seeing you all there.
Same here.
So you know the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, which is the coalition of domestic violence service providers in Maryland. They've had an interfaith component for many years now. And the other piece is in every county in Maryland, there's something called the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team, the DVFRTs. And the strongest one in Maryland is in Baltimore City. What they do is review homicides based upon domestic violence and come up with recommendations for their, area. And one of the ones that Baltimore City came up with just, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago, I could be off, but was to try to engage the faith community more. And that could be a very successful way of trying to get at the root of domestic violence, not the after effect. I mean, the sad part about DVFRTs is we're looking at the lost cases where somebody has died.
We had 54 deaths last year.
That is unbelievable. But briefly, because we are running out of time, I just wish we had more time because, as you know, we actually have listeners from other states. Is there a national organization?
Several. So there's the National Women's Law Center.
Okay.
I don't have a number. I think it's located in the District of Columbia. And then
I was just going to say their website is www.nwlc.org.
Okay, awesome.
And then there are national domestic violence organizations as well. So there's the NNEDV and then NNADV, which is national something against domestic violence, and the other one is to end domestic violence. So it's NNADV and NNEDV.
And for college students, if college students who think they might be involved in intimate partner violence, there's joinonelove.org, and that's the One Love Foundation that we had talked about earlier.
That's awesome. And your website and 1-800 numbers again.
Sure. It's www.wlcmd.org, and our phone number for the admin office is 410-321-8761.
The Employment Law Hotline is 877-422-9500. Family Law Hotline is 800-845-8550, and the Legal Forms Helpline is 800-818-9888.
Okay, I'd like to thank you so much, Laure and Michele, for coming out and sharing this information with us. Again, you will be coming back. This has been a very exciting show. And just to remind our listeners, if you need to contact us, our email is info@talkwithcassandra.com. The website is talkwithcassandra.com. And wow, this has been an amazing show. I've learned so much.
Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you very much.
And remember, if it matters to you, it matters to us. If it's important to you, it is important to us. Okay.